So I've talked about LBRY and BitTube before, but I haven't really talked about the ways that they handle monetization. Now, they are similar in some ways, but overall they are completely different strategies. So today I'm going to compare the two and basically talk about my thoughts on both of them. So if you're new to the channel, you know what to do, and let's jump right into it. So for both LBRY and BitTube, they support basically a tipping system. So this is LBRY here. I've got BitTube open up in my web browser. So if I wanted to do something like tip someone, so on LBRY, the way I would go about doing that is, let's say I want to tip Lunduk. I can go to his video, then click on tip, and let's say I just want to give him, like, I don't know, 5 LBC. So I can do that, and then that will send 5 LBC to him, and basically that'll appear in his wallet, and he'll be able to claim that for himself. If he doesn't claim that, that'll then also boost up his content for a while, but that's an entirely different story. That's more about the trending algorithm than the actual monetization strategy. So you can do the same thing over on BitTube through the airtime module or through actually clicking on the donate button. So if we go to, say, this video from Scott C. Business. So if I click on this, then if I go up to the airtime module here, so I'll just pause that so that doesn't actually play. So we go up to the airtime module, and then we wait for this to load up, and as we can see, there's this thing that says donate to Scott C. Business. So I can donate through here, or, okay, my Brave's been playing up recently, so that's why that crashed. Anyway, you can donate through there, or you can donate through the actual donate button on the page. And this is pretty much where the similarities between LBRY and BitTube's monetization actually end. So from here on, everything's going to be very, very different between the two platforms. So because we started with LBRY, let's just continue with that one. So the other way that monetization works on LBRY is through auto tips. So for a verified user, so a verified user is a user that has been basically accepted into the rewards program. Now, not every user is going to be accepted into it. This is a problem that needs to be worked on. Right now, there's some people who are getting rejected for either being from certain countries because that's a very popular country for scammers to come from, or for being an outright scammer. I've talked about in the past the problem with the verification system and how it really needs to be improved and moved out of the public Discord, but that's not important. For verified users, the first X number of views per day, I believe it's 10 right now, they will basically send an automatic tip to the viewer. Now, this tip doesn't actually come from the user's wallet. This will actually come from the LBRY pre-mine. So if you aren't sure about the LBRY pre-mine, basically LBRY has a set of coins that they allocated to themselves before the project was released. And that portion of coins is basically where the rewards and where the auto tips and everything that LBRY hands out to the users, basically that's where that comes from. So the problem with the pre-mine is that eventually it's going to run out. Now, I don't know when, but they are going to slow the rewards down as the pre-mine gets lower and lower, because obviously if they run out of the pre-mine, then the company's going to have no money and they can't pay people. So they're obviously not going to run it into the ground with the rewards program, but over time, it is by necessity going to have to go down. So because of this, and because of the fact that I don't believe a tipping culture will really be able to keep LBRY afloat, what they want to do is eventually bring in optional advertisements. So there are already advertisements on LBRY TV for users who aren't logged in, but they also want to bring in advertisements as a way to basically, I guess, as an alternate form of monetization, rather than just the auto tips and the tipping. Now, I'm not really sure how this is going to work. We haven't had this implemented yet. It's supposed to be implemented in Q3 in 2020. So if you're watching this past then and it's already been implemented, feel free to let me know how it's actually going, or if it's even been done at all. But I think that this is a really good idea, especially because of the pre-mine. Now, if LBRY didn't have the pre-mine, I don't think it would be as important to bring in advertisements. But I have voiced really strongly how important I think it is to make sure there is some sort of monetization coming in pretty much as long as LBRY is alive. Because as much as the tipping culture is nice, I don't think that once the LBC coins are worth more, people are just going to happily throw them at creators. Obviously, some people will, because look at super chats. People will throw hundreds of dollars at creators just for them to read a message. But I don't think that everyone's going to do this. And what I think is going to happen is a lot of the money is going to start pooling in the bigger creators rather than it being more proportionally distributed across the actual user base, which is what's currently happening right now. So right now, pretty much the amount you make off of LBRY is proportional to the number of views you actually get. So if you get more views, you get more LBC, you get less views, you get less LBC. And I think that's a I think that's a really good strategy to have. Now, it's obviously not perfect because obviously some people are going to do things like game the thumbnails and game the tagging system, and not just gaming them in a fair way, gaming them in a way that really, really stretches the rules so they can try to basically drag out as much money as possible. Now, if you've used LBRY, you will know exactly the channels I'm talking about. I'm not going to mention their names, but if you've used LBRY for even a second, you'll know exactly the channels that I'm talking about right now. So before I get too sidetracked by that, there are some other alternative forms of monetization that LBRY wants to bring in. So they want to do things like paid subscriptions as well. So ads are one thing. I can understand why you'd have a problem with ads, but when they have a way to easily get LBC within the app, not actually getting it as a reward, but actually buying it, they want to have paid subscriptions. And the reason that paid subscriptions are cool, so this would be similar to how Patreon does it. So every week, every fortnight, every video, every month, whatever you decide to do, then you'll be paid a certain amount of LBC. And the good thing about a subscription-based system like this is you know exactly how much is going to come in. Obviously, if people mass leave your subscriptions, then it's going to drop. But generally, if you have a subscription service, as long as you don't do anything really dumb, you know exactly how much you're going to make, and then you have extra on top of that. So that's why a lot of creators really like Patreon. So with LBRY though, it's not entirely about the creators. So you do get rewards as a user as it currently stands. So for example, if we go to the rewards tab, from using the platform, you actually get a bunch of different... From using the platform, there's actually a bunch of different ways you can actually earn LBC. So you get a daily watch reward. So right now, that's between 1 and 100. Generally, it's going to be on the lower end, but I've seen some people get 100 a couple of times. Don't know how they've managed to do that. There's also rewards for having a certain amount of followers. Obviously, if you're not a content creator, this one's not going to be really that important to you. You get some rewards for viewing stuff on the platform. You get rewards for inviting people. And occasionally, there'll be custom codes. And also, every time the application updates, there's also a reward that comes out. And then obviously, occasionally, as I said, with the reward codes, they're just thrown out randomly and there's a couple hidden throughout the platform. So as a user, there are ways that you can get LBC within the app. But as I was mentioning before, they do want to bring in an exchange so you can easily buy tips. So it's similar in some ways to what Twitch does with its Twitch, whatever they're called. You know what they're called if you use Twitch. There's like little bit thingies. I don't know. I don't use Twitch. But basically, you can buy those within Twitch and then give them out to the creators you think are deserving of them. Once it's easy to actually buy LBC within the app, I do think people are going to be far more likely to hand out LBC. But as I said, I don't think a tipping culture is going to keep the platform alive. Now, I think that's pretty much everything for the LBRY side. So let's go look at BitTube and see what that does differently. So in its current state, BitTube basically has two forms of monetization. So you've got the monetization through the tipping mechanism, which works pretty much the same way that LBRY does. And you've also got tipping through the airtime module. Now, the airtime module is a really interesting way to approach monetization. So BitTube doesn't have a pre-mine unlike LBRY, which is a very, very different approach to how you'd hand out the rewards. So obviously with BitTube, the rewards are going to be far less, but they're going to last far longer. So it's expected that the coin supply isn't going to be fully mined until roughly 2050. So the way that airtime actually works is you get a proportion of the amount of coins that are actually mined. So as coins are mined over time, obviously the amount of rewards that are going to be given out is going to reduce. But you would expect also over that time that the value of the coin is going to go up, basically. Now, I'm not an expert in crypto, but I assume that's how that's supposed to work. So when someone mines, basically the miners will get 40% of the coin. There's a 10% dev fee, there's a 5% community fee, and a 45% airtime fee. So basically what's going to happen is as the miners are mining coins, the coins that are mined actually get distributed like this. So this 45% that goes to airtime, basically the way that works is the people who run the airtime plugin, the time that they spend on the internet and the time they spend on BitTube and watching people's content, that is actually counted within this app. So this shows how much time I've been using the airtime module and how long people have been watching my content each day. So I get a proportion of the amount of coins mined per day based on the amount of time that I'm watching stuff and the amount of time that people are watching my stuff. Now, obviously, as I said, this leads to a far lower rewards pool, but it'll last pretty much indefinitely. So I wouldn't expect any website to still be around by 2050. Obviously, some are still going to be, but because it's going to last so long, I imagine it's pretty much going to outlast BitTube as a platform. Now, you might have noticed on here that there was a couple of different ways that the airtime was being counted. So, I don't know if you can see it properly, but you've got airtime and then counted airtime, and mine's equal. So the way that this actually works is, if we go over to this next page, basically the amount of time that you're on the internet is counted less and less towards the airtime module as the day goes on, and as the amount of hours go on, I guess. So on the basic level, the first 2 hours of your time is counted 100%, and then it drops down to 50%. So every hour that you're on the internet, or every hour that people watch of your content, is only worth 30 minutes. And then it goes down and down and down as the day, and then it goes down and down and down as the hours continue. So you can then increase that by staking a certain amount. So staking works similar to the way that supports work in LBRY. You can get that out at any point, but it's intended to sit there as a way to say, I'm invested into the platform. So with Airtime Basic, you can do that with no staking, or if you don't want to verify with them, with 2,500 tubes. And then every multiple of 10, it goes up until you hit the addict level. So at the addict level, the first, 13 hours? Is that right? Something like that. The first 13 hours of time on the internet is counted at 100%, and then it drops down to 50% and drops down again and drops down again. So you might have noticed that mine is always at its highest level. So if that takes a second to load up, you'll notice it's always at the top level. So I'm actually at the addict level. Why is Brave always crashing? And the reason they've got it dropping over time is to make it so it doesn't really make sense to actually bot the platform. So if you always had it at 100%, you could just run a bot that'll always just keep watching stuff, and you just keep generating tubes. And the problem with that is that's going to make it very difficult for the legitimate users of the platform to actually get some sort of stake of the tubes that are actually distributed. So the cool thing is that you don't actually just have to use the BitTube website. Your airtime's counted across the entire internet. And another cool thing along with that is you can actually link your personal website to your airtime account, so that time that people actually view that website is counted towards your airtime bonus. Now, you can also stake against this, so you can increase the amount of time that's actually counted. So obviously this is going to be far more expensive though. And the reason for that is you're not driving traffic directly to the BitTube platform, so they're going to charge you far more staking for this. But it's still really, really cool that you can do this. You don't just have to be using BitTube to generate airtime. So I don't know, I just think that's a really cool way to approach monetization. It's very similar to the way that Brave does it. So you don't just have to be using a Brave specific website. Obviously you have to use the Brave browser, like how you have to use the airtime module, but you don't have to be using the specific thing we tell you to go to. So even if you're just a regular user, I would recommend making a BitTube account and installing the airtime module, just so you can slowly generate tubes over time. Now, obviously it's not much. Over the time that I've been using BitTube, I've maybe generated, it says 119, but 100 of that I believe was from a tip, or maybe 80 of that was from a tip. And I think maybe like 25 or something has been just from using the platform. Now, this is obviously worth basically nothing at this point. I think at its current price, it's worth maybe 25 cents. Now, obviously, that's basically nothing, but that's 25 cents I didn't have before, and it's 25 cents I got from doing pretty much nothing. And maybe one day those coins will be worth a lot. So even if you're just a regular person who has no interest in making content, I would recommend just downloading the airtime module, because there's no reason not to, pretty much. So how do I feel about these two different platforms? So in its current state, I would recommend, if you want to use a platform and you don't want to use YouTube for whatever reason, and your choices are BitTube or LBRY, I would recommend in its current state to use LBRY. It has a far bigger user base, you're going to generate far more money far quicker, but the problem is that one day this pre-mine is going to run out, and I'm not sure what's going to happen there. I'm not really sure what the preparation is going to be. We're going to have to see over the next year and next 2 years, basically, what LBRY is going to do to prepare for the pre-mine to actually run out. So in the long run, if you want a platform that's basically going to generate money slowly, basically until the platform dies, BitTube is going to be the place to go. It's going to be far less money. It's going to be basically no money at all right now. It also has a far smaller user base, so you're not going to generate as much of a following. But the point I wanted to make was that over its lifetime, BitTube will have monetization. And I don't just mean monetization from tipping, I mean monetization from the owners of the platform. LBRY, it's very much going to depend on what they do prior to the pre-mine running out. I really hope they do have some sort of reward system that lasts for the lifetime of the platform, because if they don't, I think it's really going to hurt the growth of this platform, and I really do want LBRY to do well. I want BitTube to do well as well, but LBRY was the first one I came to, so I've got sort of an attachment to it, and that's not the reason I recommended it. I recommended it just because you will generate far more money, but I do have some attachment to LBRY being the first platform that I used outside of YouTube. So I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about in this video. So if you like this video, remember to smash that like button and leave me a comment down below letting me know what you think. If you want to see more videos like this, remember to subscribe and ding the little bell icon down below, because it'll really help the channel out. I'm now aiming for 10,000 subs, and any help be really appreciated. Up on that corner, I've got the playlist this video's in, so go check that out if you want to see other videos like this. Down below, I've got my Discord and my Telegram, so feel free to use any of that if you want to chat with me or see video updates, anything like that. I've also got my support links down below, so if you want to donate to me or anything like that, then feel free to do that. But obviously, as always, you don't have to if you don't feel like it. And lastly, I've got my alternate video platforms, so my LBRY and my BitTube. So before I end the video, if you notice my voice sounds a bit different, like the P and the S sounds aren't as, I guess, piercing, I've got a windshield thingy, a pop filter basically. So hopefully my videos are a bit easier to watch now. I don't know how it's going to sound. I haven't really edited this video yet, but hopefully it sounds a little bit better. So I think that's pretty much everything for me, and I'm out.